Welcome, everyone. Thank you so very much for joining me this afternoon. I hope that you're having a great Sunday. And we are talking today about the pandemic. We're talking about coping with the pandemic and solutions for our mental health. And we have a panel of esteemed guests with us this afternoon. They are going to help to educate us and share their wisdom. And I'm really looking forward to this event. If you happen to be watching on Facebook or YouTube, feel free to share this video out to your friends. If you've got comments, put them in the comments on Facebook or YouTube, and we'll try and address any comments, as many, I should say, as we possibly can. So, the onset of COVID 19 and the ensuing pandemic that's resulted in quarantine, businesses closing, and economic downturn has revealed a myriad of emotional outcomes: anxiety and stress, depression, insomnia, fear, confusion, emotional outcomes has brought us to profound psychological and social effects that we've been experiencing. According to a CDC report dated June 24th, 2020, 40.9% of respondents reported at least one mental health or behavioral health condition related to this pandemic. According to CNBC, 2.5 million businesses are at risk of permanent closure. 100,000 businesses have already closed their doors. 40 million people since the beginning of this pandemic have filed for unemployment since March, right? Admissions at mental health crisis centers are up dramatically, as well as suicides. According to the Scientific American, we're witnessing an impending mental health crisis here. In the wake of the pandemic, there will be an even greater need for help with the mental health community due to loss, isolation, and psychological trauma. Today, the LWN Live with Nature Foundation has assembled a panel of esteemed experts, like I'd mentioned, and we're going to address the impact of this pandemic on society. Please stay tuned with us for an informative roundtable discussion and learn new coping methods for dealing with the fallout from COVID 19. I want to read a couple here facts for you. These are from the CDC. We'll start with this and then we'll go from there. Nearly one third of 504,070 respondents reported an adverse medical or behavioral health condition as a result of COVID 19. Symptoms of trauma and stress disorder related to COVID 19 is up 26.3%. Symptoms of increased substance abuse to cope with the emotions related to COVID 19 is 13.3. Let me just clarify this. The symptoms is 26.3%. So that means over almost 3 people in every 10 are experiencing issues with this. An Oxford Academy research study titled Impact of COVID 19 on Suicidal Rates uh, goes as follows. Okay. Multiple lines of evidence indicate that the COVID 19 pandemic has caused profound psychological and social effects. They also say that evidence shows increased depression and insomnia in the general population, and that healthcare workers are especially distressed. Social isolation, anxiety, fear of contagion, uncertainty, chronic stress, and economic uncertainty leads us to the development or exacerbation of depressive disorder, anxiety, substance abuse, and other psychiatric disorders, excuse me. Yes. So repeated exposure too to the news media reports about coronavirus can create and intensify anxiety. The impact of the economic problems related to COVID 19 on mental health may be very severe. That's what the Oxford study is saying. Historically, economic downturns were associated with mental health disorders and suicides. So, with that, I would like to bring our panel on. Welcome, welcome. We have many people to join us this evening. We have Dr. Jenny. We have Dr. Lisa Sanders. We have
Hello.
Christopher Kaysen. We have Dr. Aaron and Veronica Garcia. We've got Dr. Sophie Nubani and Dr. Bob Choate. welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having us, Stephen.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hi.
Speak
My
up. It's
pleasure to
okay.
be here.
Yeah.
Welcome. I hope everybody's doing well. I'm looking forward to a great opportunity. We're going to start with Dr. Pardon? Okay, we're going to start with Bob. That's what we're going to do. Dr. Bob Chode. All right. So let me just do that. I've got a bunch of pages here in front of me. We're going to work through it. Okay. Dr. Bob Choate, let me just give you a quick introduction on Dr. Bob. He was on our show just recently, as a matter of fact, the Get to Know show. He is known as the Transformational Grand Master. He's a coach, he is a master of NLP, and an author of Mind Your Own Fitness. Welcome, Dr. Bob Choate. Um,
Thank you. Thank you for having
he
me.
has articles on peak performance and has published various publications in print and online as well. He's known, as I said, as the Transformational Grandmaster. He's a co-founder, I should say, of the Laughter Mindset workshops, along with Dr. Sophie Tubani, who's with us today as well. He has appeared both on radio, TV, including KABC in Los Angeles, and Co- is it Oko? Kozozo Radio. Excellent. And UI Media Network, Inner Success Radio, Hypnosis Today TV show, and many more. So, in your latest post, Dr. Bob, you're saying that we all are experiencing some immense change right now. That you mentioned change is inevitable. Social distancing, masks, restrictions on business, etc. So, Dr. Bob, maybe you could tell us, how does one deal with so much change coming at us so fast?
Well, like I said, change happens all the time. As we grow older, we change. As we learn new things, we change. What's happened, especially now since the pandemic, is that the change not only is it fast and getting faster, it's also very complex. We have many issues that are hitting us at one time. So the complexity of the change is what's been affecting us, and it makes us feel like we are having a loss of control. So our brains, we're still operating on an ancient brain. Our brain's basic structure has not changed in the last 200,000 years. Yet now we're dealing with the complexity of a pandemic, of an economic crisis, of so many other issues. And then we have regional areas as well where things are happening. And for us to be able to deal with this change, we need to be able to take a step back. You mentioned in the introduction to this panel that we're bombarded with all these news events regarding the pandemic and economics, and now we have the election coming up, and this is all coming in at one time. The best way for us as individuals is to take a step back and get back into what really uh, brings meaning to your life. Then focus on those kind of things. So when you do that, you kind of gain a sense of control again, because our brains are looking for that. So you go from being out of control from all these things that are happening, and you think the end of the world is coming. Now you go back into what you love to do, in a sense. Find that meaning, that purpose. Go into that. Focus on developing those areas of your life, whether it's running your own business, whether it's getting healthy and fit, your family, whatever brings meaning to you, focus on that. And then you can gain control. Filter out everything else and only bring in those areas. And once you do that, it's going to be so much easier. I know, like in my own case, I have stayed away as much as I can from social media, except only focusing on those things that are positive and again, brings meaning into my own life. Developing my business ventures and everything else, doing all those things. I know that even when I ended up going back to school, after I sold my advertising and marketing firm, got my master's in psychology and eventually my PhDs in both clinical and neuropsychology, that brought me meaning. It wasn't so much as I wanted to get a PhD, but it was the learning that I went through that brought meaning in my life. So that was my sense of control. And I learned this long time ago, from both as a child and then my 8 years in the Marines. When I was in the Marines, I was with First Force Recon, and we were mission oriented. So we focused on that. That had a sense of meaning for me because I enjoyed the training for the mission and everything. But I had control at that point in time instead of out of control. And I learned to utilize that. A lot of my fellow jarheads back in the day, and we're talking like 50 years ago, uh, that a lot of them later on suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. And I learned to get past that. And today I've helped out other military veterans to be able to deal with what they've gone through to get back a sense of control in their own life and and away from depression, away from suicide, everything like that, because they have it again. So
And those are all things that
that
I know that we're going to be talking about. Yes, PTSD, suicide. Yes, those are going to be some of those definite things that I would like to discuss today, as a matter of fact. Um, so I have another question here for you, Bob, and that is, how can a person make a transformation from a misery into happiness and learn how to be motivated and try and overcome a PTSD or these thoughts of suicide?
okay, earlier I mentioned having a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose, and that's very important. And I think people, especially regarding, and I know that part of the question earlier was the motivation, everything like that, and I like to divide that up into extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. So we need to go back to almost to the source of when we were children in terms of that. And children, you look at children at the early stages, and they seem to be perfectly happy, unless they're really in a bad environment. But a typical normal environment, you see a little child, a toddler, and a baby. I mean, we look at YouTube videos and we see all these babies laughing, and it makes us laugh too. We need to go back to being like that, find that sense of wonder and awe, and do things that are intrinsically motivated, something that we find on the inside. The problem that has been, and it's been this way for such a long time, is that we tend to lose it because once we get an external reward for something we enjoy doing internally, that drives away, it changes the relationship between, let's say, a child and a parent. That relationship completely changes once you introduce an external reward. So you need to step away from that, go back to your own personal source. Again, find that meaning. When you find that meaning and you do it because you love doing it. Again, uh, as I mentioned in the other question, go and delve into something uh, that you enjoy doing. Keep away from all this other stuff that really doesn't belong there. Other than, I mean, we have jobs we we do and everything like that. But even in work that we do, you can find meaning in that as well. And instead of doing something with external rewards, other than yes, we have to get paid, do it for the pure enjoyment of doing it. Because if you're doing something and if it's a struggle, then you probably shouldn't be there anyway. And I
I
know
agree
that,
with you, Dr. Bob.
yeah.
It's a
When
beautiful
I left
thing
the
when
LA,
you love what you're doing and it's your job too, and then you can get paid for it. That's a beautiful thing.
yep, yep. And that's what I suggest everybody to do. Find something that brings that not only passion, but really a sense of purpose in your own life. And that goes back to meaning. I learned from Uncle Keiji in Japan, and he's always, I mean, when he left the advertising field as Japan's top advertising artist. From Uncle KG, he found meaning and purpose in other things that he was doing, whether lecturing, writing new books, going back to his martial arts, which he still practices at 106 years old and still going at it. And it has brought him so much. So I take that from him. I get out there and act like a child and enjoy it. And I just turned 69, but I feel like I'm like 9 years old because I find just, yeah.
Love
Yeah,
it.
so
Love it.
I just keep doing that. And
Well, that's it. And
Inner
I think you've
child.
mentioned it's about getting
Yeah.
back to that inner child, and
Mhm.
and I know that Dr. Aaron and Veronica can also speak to that as well. Did any of our other guests have something that they might want to add to that? Not at this time. Okay.
No, not
What I'd like
yet.
to do now is go to Dr. Jenny Wilkins. Dr. Jenny and I are business partners, and we are working together, as well as the fact that she is the director of the medical advisory board for the LWN Live with Nature Foundation. We're working closely with her, and we're so proud that she is with us this Sunday. Thank you, Dr. Jenny, for joining us.
Thank you for having me. As always, it's a blast, and
Yes.
what a wonderful lineup of special guests we have. Thank you for taking the Sunday to educate the community, because I think it is so important to empower the consumer and make them aware of what's currently happening, that it's chemically related, right? That their bodies, their brains are being under attack by multiple different factors. So, Stephen, as you know, I take a completely different approach, being on the pharmaceutical side. I'm a chemist, I'm a formulator, I'm a drug formulator. Doctors rely on me to tell them the contraindications of medications that are out there, and very little medication use discussed in the allopathic arena for as a side effect for depression, for suicidal thoughts. And all the recent suicides of the celebrities like Anthony Bourdain and Katie Spade. I mean, these are really, really wealthy celebrities. Even the funniest man on the planet, right? The comedian that just died not that long ago, Robin Williams, right? He died. It's like, how can somebody so happy get so sad to where they decided to end their life? To me, it's like I get a big gulp in my throat. My heart goes out to these people because I know what's happening. I'm like, let me take a look at all the drugs they were taking.
Dr. Jenny, did
Yes.
he die from laughter? He was laughing so hard.
He was laughing so hard. That would have been good, right? But
We
no,
hope
and it,
so.
yeah, right. You would hope so, but when you look at what he was taking all these antipsychotics, antidepressants, and people as they age. And the angle that I come about it is, okay, we need to be functional. We need to be regenerative. We live in a time where all of our foods are being genetically modified. There's no nutritional value in the foods that we even eat. 90% of our crops are from GMOs. So there's nothing that's feeding our brains. There's nothing that's actually feeding our bodies. And then we put Band-Aids for boo-boos on our patients. They go and they present with anxiety. And then the mainstream doctor is taught to give them Xanax, Valium, Prozac, Adderall, Ritalin, Vyvanse. These are all Band-Aids for boo-boos. We're not deficient in Zyprexa. Our kids are not deficient in Zyprexa. When I work with the Child Protective Center here in the Sarasota County, and all these social workers and different counselors trying to get them on board with the type of medicine that I'm presenting, which is God's medicine, right? Natural chemicals. I'm a chemist, so I look at the body as an integrated whole. It's like, what is the root cause? What is causing the depression? What's causing the symptoms of the postpartum depression, right? We know that. OBGYNs know, but they give them the opposite of what they need. And there's countless drugs. I mean, the top 10 drugs that I know as a pharmacist that is being prescribed: birth control, the ethinyl estradiol, the levoestradiol. These all cause depression and anxiety, and it starts to destroy the endocrine system. You start attacking the endocrine system in a woman, and you're starting to turn off the natural ovarian function in a woman. It's going to impact her negatively, and specifically in the brain. And you have other drugs like the beta blockers, the metoprolol, steroids like prednisone, the sedatives like alprazolam, the proton pump inhibitors. That's like the antacids, the omeprazole. That's over the counter now. And people don't realize, okay, we're putting synthetic substances in our body that's going to negatively impact our metabolic physiology. What is it taking away? What is it stealing that's causing, okay, it's getting rid of the acid, but is that really what somebody needs when they have acid reflux, right? You go in, it's like, why not give them L-glutamine powder, which is what's naturally occurring in the body that helps them to repair that intrinsic factor in the gut? Why don't we give our consumers probiotics? Why isn't there more education? And all of the studies show that probiotics leads to depression. Bacteria plays a big link with our brains and our minds because it manufactures substances like B12. It manufactures other enzymes and catalysts that is necessary to help in the modulation of different chemicals, natural chemicals like B6, like amino acids, the proteins that we eat. So if we're eating foods that are GMO'd and we're breaking those down, they're not breaking down because the environment's not good, right? Your stomach is like a fish tank. If it's not well alkaline, it starts to look like crap. Remember the Finding Nemo scene where they purposely made the fish tank look cruddy? Well, that's like our guts. So we need to educate the consumers. If you have bad habits, okay, learn how to be functional about it. Learn how to not just be so quick to let your doctor write you the pink pill, the purple pill, the yellow pill, the black pill, the this pill, the that. And before you know, it's 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, you're on 10 different medications. The average American takes 7 to 15 medications. That's huge. That's a lot of medications. I've been there. When I was a young female in college, my gosh, I needed to stay up to study for, my tests. What did they give me? Adderall. That Adderall would start making my eye twitch, starts depleting me of my electrolytes, and I would start getting cramps all over my body. But at least I was up focused, but it did. I remember it changing my moods, being 21 years old and being like, why am I getting irritable all the time? Why am I so agitated all the time? And then I couldn't sleep because it messed with my central nervous system. And then what do you think that they give you for sleep? So 6 weeks later, I'm in the doctor's office and they gave me another medication that countermodulated the negative adverse reactions of the original medication that they gave me. But what they should have told me to take is, hey, Jenny, let's get you on some amino acids. Let's feed your brain what it actually needs, and then you can focus, right? Let's make sure that you're on the right types of fats, the good fats, right? Let's get you on some CBD. That was a stigma back then, but now we have access to CBD everywhere, and the endocannabinoid system, I think, is the missing link to a lot of neuropsychiatric disorders, and it replaces the majority of the drugs out there. The psychiatrists and psychologists that I work closely with, they get their children off of Adderall, Ritalin, and Vyvanse just by introducing CBD. Hi, Cheryl McQueen. But CBD, I mean, we have CB1 receptors in the brain. We have CB2 receptors in the gut. So it's helping your immune system, and it's also helping with that neurogenesis. I take it on a daily maintenance, like 20 milligrams a day. My children, I give 10 milligrams a day, and I feel alive. I feel alert. I don't feel foggy thinking. I'm able to sleep at night, depending on what type of CBD that I take. And you're thinking, okay, Ritalin and Adderall, we're giving these to children as young as the age of 4. Psychology Today published an article back in 2013. Stephen, I know I sound like a broken record because we talk about this all the time, that said 86 million Americans were taking neuropsychiatric medications.
Wow.
86 million Americans.
Wow.
If that doesn't appall us, what will appall us? And 15 million of those medicated were children as young as 4 years old. So we are creating the psychotic generation of the future, because the study even went on and stated that these children that were 4 years old would be the bipolar, schizophrenic psychopaths when they were in their late 20s. What are we doing? And we're healthcare professionals, right? We're light bringers. All of you that are on here are obviously light bringers, right? Light workers. I like to call that, because we're out there spreading the truth. We know that I know the games Big Pharma plays. It's an $800 billion industry. It's like the legal mob. They don't care. They want our consumers sick, fat, obese, diabetic, demented, cancered, and insane, right? We
Well, I wanted
shouldn't
to ask
have
you.
dementia. We shouldn't have Alzheimer's. It shouldn't exist. We're creating these issues. So
Yes,
it's time for us to take our brain back, right? No more chemical
it sounds
enslavement
like it
of
could be.
neurological functions.
Let's take our brains back, exactly, and get
Right.
them healthy again. Now, I have a question here for you, Dr. Jenny. The CDC indicated on June 24th, just this year, that COVID-19 pandemic is associated with the stress and anxiety, fear of contagion, like I mentioned, depression and insomnia, all these terrible things. And in the general population, this is happening. And it also suggests that healthcare professionals are especially distressed. Now, do you agree with that statement?
Oh, yes. I think being kept inside was the opposite approach than what should have been done, right? We know what causes a cytokine storm. Stress and anxiety causes you to release a cytokine storm, which means you have inflammation throughout your body because that's what it is. And when you're under stress because you're in fear, right, you're going to increase your chances of getting sick. And not just with COVID, they don't talk about all the flu symptoms going around with people. How many people I saw last week that I personally tested for COVID and they came back negative, but they had all the symptoms of COVID, but they had the flu instead or an upper
Good.
respiratory infection. But they're indoors, they're not talking to their friends. So yeah, absolutely having that scare factor, keeping people indoors with no human contact. We're
Well,
spiritual beings. We're meant to be together, right? We're meant
how
to
does
touch, we're meant to
then,
hug.
from the healthcare professional standpoint, risk management play a role with respect to this?
Oh, repeat that again, Stephen. I had trouble hearing you.
I was referring to risk management. Healthcare professionals certainly have to look at the risk management aspect of dealing with people that could possibly have this COVID. And so I'm curious how you feel about the risk management aspect of dealing with this COVID as a healthcare professional.
Well, I come from the prevention side. Like my staff, I test my staff every single week, but I also inoculate them with high dose vitamin D, high dose zinc, high dose vitamin C, glutathione, all these antioxidants that are antiviral. And we have all the studies to support that. I think every American, everybody in the world should be going to their doctor's office to be able to have access to these shots. And you have people like me being filtered on the news, being filtered on YouTube, being filtered. I mean, Zuckerberg, YouTube, they shut down anybody that talked about vitamin C. I'm like, are you kidding me? They shut down anybody that talked about vitamin D. I was like, these are not studies that I made up. You can go to JAMA, you can go to the Oxford Journal of Medicine, you can go to Yale, you could go to Harvard. The Chinese were already treating people with vitamin C way before people were talking about it. That's how they were actually reversing it. That proved to be more, of a better approach. Even melatonin reduces fevers, and we have all the studies to support that. So why are we giving people ibuprofen and acetaminophen when we know that melatonin reduces your body temperature? But my staff is always masked and goggled and has their body suits on when we go to somebody's house that has been exposed. But I haven't had one. I have 25 RNs that work here locally, and none of them, they've all been exposed to cases with COVID, and not one of them has ever been exposed to it. Every single week we test them negative, myself, I've been to people's houses. I don't fear it because I know exactly how to combat it, right? I think we need more education to make people feel more. It's like if you're healthy and your body has the tools, it will fight off cancer, it will fight off depression, it will fight off disease. It's as simple as that, just like a car. If you maintenance your
Right.
car, it's not going to fall apart. This is our
Right.
car,
That,
right?
that kind of leads me to Dr. Lisa Sanders. I just want to introduce Dr. Lisa Sanders here because she can speak to this next question, which is coming from what Dr. Jenny's just been talking to us about. And Dr. Lisa Sanders is a medical doctor with the graduated from the University of South Florida here. She lives here in Sarasota as well. So does Dr. Jenny, by the way. And Dr. Sanders received her medical degree from the University of Florida in Gainesville. She's certified in internal medicine with a specialization in infectious diseases. She's currently the executive director of the Ybor Youth Clinic located in Tampa, Florida, and the clinic is part of the University of South Florida Department of Pediatrics. And it provides testing and treatment for HIV and sexually transmitted diseases. And other community organizations for the underserved for the youth from ages 13 to 24. Welcome, Dr. Sanders. Thank you very much for joining us.
Steve, I'm having a little trouble hearing you on I don't know if everybody else is having trouble too. Your voice is very low, so I didn't quite hear the question.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with this.
A little bit better
I had a
now.
problem on the last round too as well. I checked my volume, but it was okay. I need to
Sounds
speak.
good now. Better now.
Is that better?
Yeah, better for me. Is that better for everybody else?
Yeah. Okay, we'll get this figured out. Yeah. So I was just asking you. I would like your input. I was just introducing. Maybe you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing there, Dr. Sanders.
Sure. So I'm actually an infectious diseases. I'm an adult infectious diseases physician. I work at the University of South Florida. I am by no means a viral expert. I run a clinic down in Ybor City for where we cater to youth 13 to 24. We work on do STI testing, HIV testing, and prevention and risk reduction behaviors for at-risk youth. So that's what I'm doing right now. But obviously, a lot of my time lately has been taken up with keeping up with what's going on with COVID, and all of us in medicine have been, there's just a tremendous amount of information coming out right now. So hopefully I can give you sort of my take on some of the things that we're talking about.
Excellent. That sounds like a great idea. So as a infectious disease specialist, though, what's your position on social distancing and the masks that are used to reduce the spread of the disease? Do you feel that is a good way to prevent the disease?
Sure, I do, and I'll tell you why I think that. So I think there's two lines of evidence that help us with that. One is sort of what we know as scientists about the biology of how respiratory viruses spread. And so as everybody's aware, this is a virus that gets in through your respiratory tract, infects you that way. So while we don't know everything there is to know about COVID, we do know a fair amount about just sort of the biology of respiratory viruses and how they spread. And this is similar to something like the flu, where, you know, everybody's heard we can isolate the virus from respiratory droplets. When I talk, if I cough, if I sit, we've heard the article, if you sing, we're producing respiratory droplets every time we do that. Those invisible particles go out, and if you happen to be infected with the virus, those droplets will contain some of the virus. So to determine if you get an infection or not, it's dependent on, number one, how many of those particles you come in contact with, number two, how long you're in contact with somebody that is infectious. And that's influenced by things like how close are you standing to them? Is there wind that's dispersing those particles through the air while you're talking? So, so I do think if you do something like put on, I'm sorry, Steve?
When you're outside and say you were coughing and you had COVID-19, can it drift a long ways in?
A lot less. Well, what happens is it can drift long, you know, the air can take it and spread it. But what happens as it's spreading those viral particles, it's not spreading them all in the same place. So it's sort of dispersing them. So there's very, very good evidence to suggest that outside this virus doesn't spread as efficiently as it does inside. The way it spreads is inside, lots of people, close contact, air not moving. So, so I do think wearing masks it's a physical barrier. If you just think about, you know, just picture those viruses coming out of your mouth and spreading around, you put some kind of physical barrier over your mouth, that's going to help. So I think the masks do help. I think what they've done in the grocery stores with putting up those plexiglass barriers so that when you talk, the stuff hits into the barrier, I think those things help. And I think there's good scientific evidence to support that. So I said there's sort of two lines of evidence. One is the biology of how they spread, The other stuff is there's a lot of epidemiologic evidence, and the epidemiologic stuff is, well, let's look at a group of people that has this virus and see how they got it. And that epidemiologic evidence also supports the idea that if you do things like social distance, if you do things like mask, if you look at what they did in New York City when they were, when they had tremendous numbers of cases and they kept people away from each other, those things I think do help. And I think some of that sort of can help with some of the anxiety that people feel. Like, I have a lot of people say, oh, I'm afraid to go to Publix. When I look at the information, I mean, if I put a mask on and less likely touching surfaces, maybe you can get it that way, but much less likely. So if I wash my hands and put a mask on when I go to Publix, I'm not particularly worried about going to Publix and picking it up there.
Thank you. That's really good information there. I wanted to also ask you about they're talking about a vaccine. They're trying to come up with this vaccine.
Yeah.
And you can speak to this way better, I'm sure, than most of us here, maybe. But if any of the other guests have something to say after Dr. Sanders mentions this, I want to hear from you too. I want to hear you.
Yeah.
Now, what about fast tracking this vaccine? And do you
Oof.
feel that would be safe? And if you do, or if you don't, tell us why.
Oof. Yeah.
It's a
Vaccine,
tricky one.
this is a tough question. So I I'm an infectious disease doctor. I'm a believer in vaccines. I think we've seen what happens when you don't give people measles vaccine. Measles is really contagious, and 1 out of 3,000 people that get it die, even with modern medical stuff. And we've seen without vaccinating, I mean, we've seen a lot of cases of measles. So I do think vaccines are a good thing. I think there's a lot more benefit than there is harm from vaccines. With COVID, we're trying to do something that it normally takes us 8 or 10 years of study, maybe more, to do, and we're trying to do that in a year. So I think I think that what they're doing, as long as the process is allowed to go forward the way that it should, and that we complete these phase 3 trials if we complete all of them, it'll be 30,000 people or so for each one of these different kinds of vaccines. And there's 8 companies right now that are in phase 3 trials that are enrolling around 30,000 people or so. I think we'll have a good idea of big side effects that we would see. The problem is, number one, we can't rush that process. Most of these vaccines, you have to give 2 doses of the vaccine like 3 weeks apart. So there is no way by November that we're going to have enough information to say this is a safe and effective vaccine. So I think the process needs to go along the way it is. We can't have interference from whatever outside parties might want to hope that there's a vaccine developed quickly. We need to let the process finish. And then we need to sit back and look very, very carefully at the evidence. Now, even with doing that, if there are some of these complications that happen in 1 in 100,000, 1 in 200,000, 1 in a million people, we're probably not going to, we may not pick those up with what we're doing with these trials right now. And that's going to take probably a number of years for us to see that stuff come out. I think, but if you're a high-risk person, if you're somebody who is 75 years old and has diabetes and and is obese and has heart disease, maybe then the benefit of the vaccine with the potential risk of maybe side effects they don't know about is better for you. But all of these things, we're going to have to be very careful and measure individual risk. I don't know that we want to just blanket vaccinate everybody when the vaccines come out. This is a tough problem. And one other thing, let me throw out before and then I'll let some other people say what they want to say. One thing we need to really be careful with vaccines and with the way these trials are designed, just because you get a vaccine, that does not mean that they're talking about maybe 75% effective anyway. We're not talking about something that's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be okay. But that doesn't mean that you can't still get the virus in your nose and spread it around. So it's not like we're going to give people vaccines and then we can just forget about masks and social distancing. It's not going to be like that. We're going to need to still do both. And I think probably our strongest thing to prevent spread is smart use of masks and social distancing. That's not saying shut the world down. That's not what I'm saying. But I think using masks smartly and distancing smartly, even when we get a vaccine, we're still going to have to do that. So that's my 2 cents. We'll see what other people think about that.
Yes, yes, I'd like to hear from the panel what they think. How about Aaron and Veronica? I'd love to hear from you as well. And if you have something to say, Christopher, speak up. Sophie, speak up if you've got a question or concern here, and how you feel about it as well. Let's start with Dr. Sophie.
Yeah, I know. I agree because of mentioning that you need 10 years to study, and then we're cramping everything so fast. So that would be a very wise precaution as we are transitioning to interacting and not forgetting to be careful. However, a big focus would be our internal immune system. And I really believe that it really starts from there. And that's why, when she said, like, literally, if you have diabetes, if you're obese, if you're this, that you got to be extra careful. And usually, overall, you have to be extra careful, even in normal circumstances. But now that we do have something to be very aware of, we can't overlook it. And therefore, the transition has to be, and this is why something like this is so beautiful, because it's about the education, about the informing, about the knowing, and about the prevention versus cure. And if we can take all that into consideration, I think that we will be better equipped mentally, psychologically, and physically as well. So I'm right on with that.
Yeah. Does anybody else have something that they might want to add to that?
I do think that what you're mentioning with prevention and things is kind of interesting with this virus, the people that do get it. I mean, some of these problems, like you're mentioning, diabetes, high blood pressure, those are things that I think this is a good time for people to think about trying to get those problems under control and address things, exercising more, a healthy diet, doing the things that you can do, because sort of echoing what you said, the people that tend to do better with it, there are still going to be some young, healthy people that don't do well, and we've seen that. But in general, the healthier you are, the better you are able to handle this virus. So a great time to be thinking about sort of overall health. And I think, going back to what you were saying about the mental health issues too. I mean, this is just really dramatically it's so difficult for people that have substance abuse issues, any kind of mental health issues, isolation. It's really amazing to me how a little respiratory virus has brought so much of this stuff to the forefront now and made us think about these things that we really have to address sort of the entire person to try to keep people well with this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that is important too to talk about, because I think one of the statistics, as I recall that I read, is that people are using drugs and alcohol to cope with it.
Yeah.
That's it,
Yep.
and it's going up. That's
Yep.
certainly not good. The admissions are going up for the crisis centers, and some people are taking their lives.
Yeah, and it's like it was sort of, it was a joke in the beginning how much alcohol consumption has increased and stuff. But for people with alcohol use problems, it's a big deal. This is really a stressor. It's very difficult.
Yeah, and I think
Okay,
also people
we
have.
got a question I understand here. Let's go to a question. Randy, you have a question here for us?
Yeah, it's for Dr. Sanders.
Okay, for Dr. Sanders, we have a question here for you. What is the nanotechnology vaccine that she is hearing about? She has doctors telling me this vaccine will change our DNA. What do you know about that, Dr. Sanders?
There are 4 different types of vaccines that they're testing, and several of them are ones that have never been used before therapeutically. There is some kind of nanotech that I am not super familiar with. The ones that have been getting the most press are the mRNA ones, and I don't think none of these vaccines are going to change your DNA, but the thing with vaccines, what they're supposed to do, they trigger an immune response in your body. That's what we do with a vaccine, and we want the best vaccines trigger a very targeted immune response specifically to that virus, bacteria, whatever it is that you're trying to treat with that vaccine. The problems we've seen in the past were some of the vaccines that have been developed, and even recently we've seen problems with them where they trigger the wrong immune response, and that's sort of where you get the side effects and where you've had some problems with vaccines. What I can say about now, the people that are doing this are the information about the immune system is incredibly sophisticated now. It's really hard to keep up with the all these different advances that they've made with immunology. So the the vaccines that they're looking at, they're aware of the potential complications, and those are the types of things that they're looking for. I don't know about if I don't believe any of them actually specifically integrate into your DNA and change your DNA. That's gene therapy, and that's not, I don't think we're looking at doing any of that with the vaccines. I can look more and see if I can find something about that specific thing, but to my knowledge, that's not what any of these vaccines are talking about doing.
That would be pretty serious if they're trying to change
Yeah.
your DNA.
Integrating into the DNA, that's like, maybe they're talking about gene therapy or something, but that's not what there is one of the vaccines that they're looking at is some kind of nanoparticle. I don't know enough about it to say something definitive about it here. Maybe somebody else does. I do not.
It's the
Okay, there was a
hydrocele, but I'd
follow-up
have to read
question
it.
to that from Tina Leonard. Thank you for your question, your comment here, Tina. We appreciate you. Since you work closely,
Hmm.
since you work closely with our youth, how are they coping or embracing COVID limitations, and how do you feel that they're going to have long-term effects from the guessing behind
Yeah.
COVID-19 chaos? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I can say just a couple of words, and then maybe some other people have some experience
Yes,
too. So,
yes.
the
Thank you.
youth that we see are, sort of higher risk youth that, a lot of them have mental health issues, a lot of them don't have stable homes, and this has really been difficult. It's what we've done at our clinic. We've had to change things at our clinic. We offer walk-in HIV and STI testing, and we've had to stop doing it on a walk-in basis because of the concern about people coming in with asymptomatic COVID and exposing our staff. So we've gone to scheduled appointments, and we've also tried to amp up what we do online and with social media. So we've been doing sort of support groups online, trying to have some information sessions online for youth, talking about COVID, because I do think it's, again, a question of, information is sort of power, and what you want to do is sort of give people, like I said, there's a lot of not definite information, but we do know some things, and you want to give people information so that they feel like this is something that they can deal with and are knowledgeable about. So we've tried to do that with youth. We've tried to do it with, I've had my first, I had to sign up for an Instagram account, and we're doing some stuff on Instagram, which is not a real natural way for me to communicate, but it's how kids like to do it. So we've embraced those things and trying to do that sort of thing. But we're seeing a lot more need for mental health services, and trying to meet those as best we can. But I do think it's going to be a huge issue for years to come with kids that are going through this. Even kids, just kids not being able to graduate from college, or not being able to do all the normal things, or kids, their college experience, stuff that, normal kids can do. This is going to have some lasting effects, I think.
That's a very good point. I'd like to, just so that we can get Aaron and Veronica involved here too, because they're great people, good dear friends of mine as well. Dr. Aaron and Veronica Garcia are teachers in the field of transformation. Combined, they share 30 years of knowledge and experience in the healthcare uh, arena and doing energy work, emotional healing, and intuitive abilities. Aaron and Veronica help others with positive changes in their lives, starting from within. They help people release the emotions that they might be holding on to via their VA process, which means a vibrational alignment process, which then allows them to experience more happiness in their lives. They also have a Facebook show regularly Mondays and Wednesdays at noon Pacific, and that is Awaken Your Spirit. Welcome, and thank you so very much for being here today. Now, what I'd like to ask you is now, how would you work with these children that are going through this and trying to make this adjustment? How would you help people to get happier through your energy work? How does that work? Can you maybe explain that to our viewers?
Yeah, so first of all, we would find out what they're struggling with. Ask them a few questions, like what are their, the issues that they're experiencing, what are the emotions that they're experiencing during this, and we take them through a process where if there's like emotions that they don't know what to do with, and they just, there's some people that suppress it and it gets lodged somewhere in the body, and we help them to release that. And just recently we worked with a young girl. She's about 17. And she was just diagnosed with ADHD
and anxiety.
And anxiety. And they were in the process of possibly putting her on medication. So we helped her to release what was going on, and it did go back to some experiences in childhood. And after we worked with her, she felt more relaxed, and having to do homework at home, through the online system, it also brought up some anxiety for her. But we helped her to work through that. And then just thinking about it, she said she felt more calm and, more happy. And I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that.
Especially with our youth, we all have, issues that we're going to deal with in our lives. We don't get away from it. We're human. And one of the biggest things, in at least our personal experience and working with other people, is, we have these things we call our emotions, our experiences of life that we have to go through. And we're not really taught at a young age. There's no class that most of us have taken. Some have, some haven't, on what do we do with this when it shows up. And what we've come to understand is, if we can understand ourselves, understand why do we have these experiences. And the biggest question we always ask anybody is, if they're feeling something, they're feeling upset, they're feeling anxious, there's a reason why for that. And we have to identify and explore that. And those of you who are life coaches and work in mental health, I know you guys do this as well. And any practitioner is, you have to identify what is causing this issue that someone's having today. And there's this universal law that's called cause and effect. And that just states that every effect has a cause, and every effect creates another cause. And so there's always a reason why. And if, I think Dr. Jenny was mentioning earlier about if we just are medicating, we're not really getting the cause. We're just trying to cover up the symptoms, and the effects of that will lead to another cause of something else. And so just like this young girl is trying to understand, is why do we feel the way that we're feeling? And when we can identify that, and a lot of times it'll take us back to an experience that they've had that's been just trapped and lodged within their whole entire nervous system. And we have to heal and release that concept so the body and the nervous system can calm down. And we're talking about this whole concept of a pandemic. If we are in fear, if we are in anxiety type modes, that's going to completely suppress our immune system and leave us more vulnerable to getting anything. And our body is just the emotional filter, and that's how we will express. So we just teach people how to release the emotions that they hold on to, and give them a different perspective and a change of a mindset so they can see it in a different way and feel better about it.
And also, kids are very sensitive to the energy of others. So if the parents are freaking out about the whole pandemic and they're worried and stressed about what's going on, the kids are going to feel that, they're going to see it, and that's how it translates to them. So the parents' energy, the parents have to be aware of how are they handling their own stress, how are they looking at this pandemic, and are they translating that to their kids? Because kids are like a sponge, especially between, from the moment they're born to about 12, 13 years old, and they pick up on that. So if the parents are watching the news constantly, looking at all the negativity that's going on, the kids are soaking that in. So it's very important for the parents to be able to handle their stress in a constructive way, and also maybe not put so much energy and focus onto all the negativity that's going on, and maybe do something that's going to bring more positivity into the home environment, because that's very important, especially being at home doing all the homeschool. There has to be more positive energy around your environment. Otherwise, if they're constantly being bombarded by all this negativity, they're just going to soak it up.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us. Now, before we go to break, folks, which we're going to go to break in just a few moments here, so we can give our panelists a rest. And I would like to go to Christopher Case and introduce Christopher as well. Christopher is a friend. He's also been on our Get to Know broadcast. Most everybody here has been on that Get to Know broadcast. If you haven't watched those, that's Mondays at 7 o'clock. And every week on Monday, well, we talk to people that are making a positive impact in community. And that's what Christopher Kaysen does as well. He's making a positive impact in community. He has been diagnosed with autism. I've known him for some time. I've been involved with him with a foundation, the Chemo Buddies for Life Foundation, that we help to support as well. He is the owner of Christopher Kaysen Photography and a host of Through Autistic Eyes, a great show. He is the fourth runner up at the next Impactor, and that's actually when I ran across him last year. Fourth runner up, next Impactor competition. Congratulations. That was a really great showing there. And
Thank you.
Christopher, we love you very much. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Mhm.
It depends on where you're at.
Yeah,
It could
it's
be
a
morning
pleasure.
for some people, but thank you for joining us.
Yeah, if you haven't noticed, I tend to be the silent person of the group. So, I mean, compared with everyone else with the PhDs and all that, I just feel so small. And like despite how tall I am in real life, I just want to go to the corner here and just hide out. But yeah, it's just all I have is like my own experience to contribute from going through all this, and also just joining different Facebook groups full of other autistics that are also going through all this stress and anxiety. And a few of their responses was like, well, normal as usual, because this is what we deal with every day, really, with staying at home all the time. And this is just exacerbating it even more, especially with the job losses and just, well, we tend to get sometimes diagnosed with like a secondary thing such as anxiety, sometimes as ADHD along with it, and sometimes it's just, and it's freezing up there again. But it tends to happen. But
of the pandemic, that's because you do photography. I love your photography. You do art as well, and
yeah,
you have this connection of like through the Chemo Buddies for Life, and it's about healing through art, and you carried that message as well. So tell us about how this pandemic has affected you and your business, because you had mentioned to me that things have slowed down as a result of that, and so we want to know how you've been dealing with that. What support are you getting to try and get through this?
well, I was mainly an event photographer, but then COVID hit and poof, events gone. So I just had little to no income coming in, and I took the very wrong.
Did he freeze?
Okay, Christopher.
Time to
Yeah,
decide that. Hear me? Oh,
on some
must
people that are
must
doing
been
some
the
other things in the
internet trying to
building.
interrupt me. Don't interrupt me, internet.
Ask Alan to refrain from using this as a platform for you to broadcast other things and take people away from here. Thank you, Alan. We appreciate your interest, but you can stop with the posting of those videos. Um, that's on Facebook, Alan Clark. Please stop, or we'll
Oh,
block you. So, how, Christopher?
okay.
Uh, is the healing through art. Now, I know that you were doing this show. Is that through Autistic Eyes when you were doing the painting and I saw you were just touching up in this painting, and it was kind of like, I'm trying to remember that guy that does the painting show, and in an hour he paints a picture. Right.
Oh, Bob Ross.
So
Yeah, that
tell us
was actually
about you
part of my own process of what
right?
the to get more into the whole what we were discussing before of how to pivot, because everything went loopy and I had to figure out how to deal with it. So I just looked back at what I did during the competition and just try to keep my head straight, thinking, okay, what tools do I have now, instead of just going into a panic and then turning on the TV and going even more of a panic with everything the news spouts out, which I haven't watched the news in ages, and that certainly helped with the stress, keeping it down. So, it's just a matter of just looking at what you have now and just make use of it, learn from whatever you have, and just keep moving forward in small progress, even though it feels like we need to hurry up, but we tend to make more mistakes if we end up hurrying up, such as what was, sorry, her name, I'm just pointing to her, but with rushing with the vaccine, you need to take your time, and that's just like it is with everything in life. It just progresses on its own pace, and if you try to rush it, well, mistakes happen. So I've just been looking back with what I did with doing live stream art painting and how therapeutic it was for me growing up, since I used to draw a ton, and that helped me with dealing with everything in life growing up. So I figured, why not do it online and just have everyone else join in and just be able to help soothe them, whether they want to join in with painting or just to simply watch, since I like to play a little meditative music along in the background as well, because that also helps keep everything calm. And just experiment, see how far it goes, because you never know, because that idea you've always put off the whole time because you were focusing on what's now been canceled out due to COVID might be the thing that actually launches you up. So
yes, I think for a lot of
just a
people,
matter
maybe
of,
a lot of people aren't thinking about that opportunity of using this time to get a little bit more creative. And that's what we're going to be talking about when we come back. We're going to be talking about creative thinking with Dr. Sophie and utilizing this creative thinking to be able to come up with solutions and become more successful and happier. Now we're going to take a short break here. I've got a video. I'd love for you to watch that. We will be back in about 5 minutes. So this is a bathroom break for you, or whatever you want. This is an opportunity to see one of my morning broadcasts. I was just out on the Celery Fields Hill, one of the highest elevations around, and I do morning broadcasts as well. It is the Sunrise Daybreakers Tribe. We're going to show you live, well, pre-recorded live from the Celery Fields. It's about lions, tigers, and bears, but it's about time to enjoy your life. Let's work on that part, and we'll be back shortly and carry the conversations forward. I want to thank everybody. Please stay with us. Thanks. I told you, lions, tigers, and bears. Welcome. We've got the lions roaring behind us. You have joined me. This is the Sunrise Daybreakers Tribe. This is the opportunity to connect to nature, connect to source, and connect to community. The community is you, and I appreciate the fact that you've taken time to come and join us. This morning, I'm talking about take time to enjoy life. I have to say, I'm glad that they're in a cage. It's not great that they're in a cage, but by gosh, if I was standing out here and they were in the bush, I'd be a little bit concerned. So welcome to Southwest Florida, Sarasota, Florida. We're talking about enjoying life. One of the reasons why I came right out here I'm at the top of the Celery Fields Hill in Sarasota, Florida. We're at about the highest elevation in Florida, a whole 45 feet, something like that. But I appreciate the fact that you've taken time to come and join me. I believe that you watch these videos because you desire positive transformational change in your life. We talked about that the other night with Dr. Bob Choate. How to make a transformational change in a positive manner in your life. Well, part of it is to enjoy life, and it might seem that it's difficult to try and enjoy life. There's so much stuff going on in our world these days. The world is definitely making a transformational change. And sometimes it might be really hard to actually try and enjoy it because people might have lost their jobs. We might be fighting and arguing with our loved ones or our friends. But what we have to do is get grateful. Today, by the way, I call it Thankful Thursday, because I like to start my day with gratitude. And the reason I start with gratitude is because as I'm just waking up, that's one of the most receptive moments of a day, other than when we're going to sleep. We're in that theta stage in our brain. Everything that we're getting is going directly into our subconscious, and our subconscious is our belief system, and that's what guides us to make the decisions about how we perceive life, because it's our belief system. So by putting positivity and gratitude into my brain very first thing, it's going to set the stage for my day to be happy. It doesn't mean that things won't happen that are going to challenge me. I'm a human. We're all human. So we can be challenged. I can temporarily get upset. But the beautiful thing about it is that I've been practicing gratitude for a long time. And because of the consistency, I'm able to enjoy life so much better. I don't hang on to the regrets or the angers or, this person created this for me. I take accountability for the things that happen in my life, because I know that I actually created them, or then I actually allow my mind to go to wherever it is that creates the negativity. And so what I have to do is I have to let go of the negative stuff. And it starts with forgiving myself. And so when you forgive yourself of the things because you've made mistakes, and yes, I personally have hurt my family, my friends, my children. And although I don't regret it, because now I recognize that I learned something from that so that I wouldn't do that in the future, well, I'm not proud of it, but the fact is that those difficult moments and those times that I fell and hit the ground were the opportunity to learn and grow. We can grow from our difficulties. And so when we start our day with positivity and gratitude, it sets that stage, like I said, to be able to go about enjoying that day to the best of our ability, because the fact is we only have this moment. We only have this present minute right here, right now. And so if we make the most of it and we act like it's our last day here on earth, you can really have a good time. No, I'm not saying do negative stuff or things that might harm us, from our mind or our body physically. We want to do good things. We want to do things like random acts of kindness, because that creates joy. And when we have gratitude, that sets up a chemical reaction within our body. It releases the serotonin, the oxytocin. Back, I think. Here we are. Okay, I guess we had a little bit, maybe possibly some audio things. I don't know whether it's feeding bad or whether it's just my computer that needs to be worked on a little bit. So thank you, everybody. We thank the panelists. We thank the viewers. We appreciate everybody who's taken time to come and join us. We've been talking about coping with the pandemic. We're talking about solutions for our mental health and trying to educate people to be able to, do better with this quite dire situation that we're experiencing. People are getting stressed out, anxiety, divorce, suicide, all kinds of stuff is happening. We want you to know that we are all here for you. That's why we're doing this special today, is to share the wisdom, particularly with from the doctors and people like Aaron and Veronica, that are trying to help people, and then also be able to understand people like Christopher Casey that's going through this, and from his perspective as well. I'd like to talk now a little bit more about creative thinking, and I want to give Dr. Sophie Nubani credit for being a creatrix interpersonal coach. Okay, she's also an NLP master as well as Dr. Bob is, and a best-selling author. She just recently published a book, Optimize Your Creative Mindset. You may or may not have seen it, but I tell you what, if you haven't got that book yet, I've got it. It's a great book. It is a manual. It's about how to start utilizing your thinking. Because if you've seen me before, it's all about the thought, is the way I look at it. Everything starts with a thought, and then it takes an action plan to actually change your life and make that transformational change to a positive, enjoyable, happy, healthy lifestyle. And that's what all of us are here is to help our viewers to be able to achieve that happy lifestyle. Now, Dr. Sophie is also certified as a laughter yoga, and we've had people like herself as well as the laughing yogi. And this is therapy, and this helps people. Laughter is one of the best things you can possibly do. Dr. Bob and Dr. Sophie are also involved in the laughter mindset. If you're on Facebook, check that group out. There's always something to make you smile. So, Dr. Sophie, welcome. Thank you so very much for being here.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Thank you for this beautiful idea because it is very definitely needed. And the Lawn Foundation is doing amazing work to empower our communities. And now that we have technology to even go further and spread more awareness, it's such a delight to participate and to contribute to such beautiful calling and cause. So I am very happy to be amongst all of you. It was really nice to hear each one of the panelists' feedback, insights, suggestions, and recommendations to some of the areas that you asked about. And my passion is a lot to do with creative thinking. And because I really feel that when we are able to utilize such a field in our daily living, we can minimize a lot of pressure and a lot of mental stress, as well as many other issues that come alongside when we don't have the ability to think different and utilize different thinking styles, basically, and problem solving, which is one of the things that is really needed in such times, is for us to not feel stuck and to feel that there is other solutions and that we are able to file those ideas and thoughts in our mental map and vision so that we can be able to take action from there. So thank you so much for having us, Stephen.
Oh, you're very welcome. There's just so much to learn from you. It's like a library. Your certifications. I tell you, but you're a beautiful person, and you're spiritual too, as well. You know, there's a big spiritual connection with all of the panelists I know here today.
Yes.
And that's a beautiful part of it too, as well. Now, I do have a question for you. The CDC, we're going back to that CDC report back in June 24th, and overall, 40.9% of the respondents, that's almost half of the people, reported at least one mental or behavioral health condition, including symptoms of anxiety disorder or depressive disorder as a result of the quarantine. How do you feel about the lack of social interaction that's taking place, and how do you feel that that's affecting people, Dr. Sophie?
Sure. Just like anything in life, we all act different and respond different to life. And based on our belief systems and our diet and our environment, we are going to have different results. And if we want to talk on average, a lot of people, by human nature, it's not a one man's island. Obviously, we are created by nature to socialize. I mean, if you go back from way back in cave times, you know, if you're alone, you're going to feel unsafe because you had your tribe and you wanted to survive. And when you had a tribe, you felt more together and more safe to face an, you know, like a possible threat at that time. You know, people were hunting and so forth. So it still sticks to our, you know, cellular memory somewhere. Where we want to feel safe and we want to feel together and we want to feel connected. It is only natural to have those emotions. And when we are not having those emotions, we feel alone and we feel isolated. And along that comes a lot of other concerns, such as depression, anxiety, stress, and a lot of other things like that. I mean, Virginia Satir, and she's one of the top family therapist that has been witnessed in history in many ways. She is very respected in the area of psychology. And she said that for us to survive, we need 4 hugs a day. And for us to maintain our emotions, we need 8 for maintenance. And we need 12 for growth, okay? So when we go into that area, and we see that we have less and less of that, mind you, on top of that, the concern in houses that people are concerned if somebody could have been had something and now you're more isolated, and the children who don't get it or understand those things could also start feeling emotional suppression in those kind of areas as well. But the beautiful thing in life, for every problem, there is a solution somehow. And, you know, you just, maybe we didn't find it yet, but it exists. And once we adopt a, you know, a mindset of really looking for the solutions and not focusing on the problems, we are able to expand our consciousness and our awareness. And once we get into a meta awareness levels, we are going to start to feel more, see more, connect better, and we're going to understand our struggles more. For example, Dr. Bob mentioned about finding meaning. And I actually was gifted by him Viktor Frankl's book, A Man's Search for Meaning. And I really love that book a lot because even though he was in concentration camps, he lost all his family. And yet, his vision and his mindset, his thought, finding meaning going through the struggle is what allowed him to transcend such trauma. And we're talking about someone losing his wife, his kids, later a year, his own sister. He had no one left of his family. Okay, so people take, you know, adversity in many different levels. But one of the things that he did mention and helped, that he really referred to laughter being very helpful. And I bring laughter in such cases because we don't want to go away from it and not connect to that childlike innocence, like Dr. Jenny and Dr. Bob addressed, and a few others, of course, all of you, and we are aware of that. But the truth is, when we are laughing, we're engaging both sides of our brain, our right and left hemisphere, which really supports creative thinking. And once we are adopting tools that are going to be able to assist us in building our resilience towards this adversity, towards uncontrolled manners, and understand meaning behind the struggles, and then we start becoming more equipped to face such things in a much better way. And a basic thing is energy always follows thought. So if we are able to learn how to think different, our life starts looking different to us as well.
And it's interesting that you say that. And I think I picked a good video that I was talking about earlier, because it is all about perspective and mindset and thinking. That's the way I see it personally. Now I'd like to go back to Dr. Jenny, where we've been talking about a whole bunch of stuff. We're getting some serious feedback too now. I'm not sure why. So Dr. Jenny, I wanted to come back to you. And so we've been talking a lot of stuff here. Share with us what are you thinking now about this, the things that you've heard? Share with us.
I love
maybe an
Dr. Sophie. Oh my gosh. I keep having these conversations with people. You know, it's like your struggles don't define you. This is not who you are. You can't be sitting on your pity pot. So I 100% agree with you. Encouraging people, it's like, look at what you've conquered. I mean, we have to be this pillar, this palm tree, right? That's blowing in a hurricane. If you want your rainbow, you have to be willing to go through the storm, right? This is what makes people into like pillars, these archangels, I like to call them. And there is, I mean, all the scientists, neuroscientists that I'm talking to, especially at the Brainwave Center here in Sarasota. I don't know if you're here in Sarasota, but the Brainwave Center helps to reinforce that positive neurofeedback after struggling, helping people to get rid of that inflammation, but then reminding people that through the struggle, you know, you're learning, because you're constantly, your brain is going through the good with the dopamine and then the bad, and you're getting through, you know, okay, how am I going to learn from this experience? I think Einstein put it very, very well. He's like, if, you know, what sets intelligent people apart, right, is, and I have to look up the quote, but it was something in the lines of, okay, if you make the same mistake more than once, okay, then you're a crazy person. But if you learn from those mistakes and you realize, okay, I'm going to dust myself up, I'm going to pick myself up, now your brain is going to that next level. You're becoming more elevated. My goodness, if I just sat in a little corner about, you know, my childhood and what I went through, it's like, why would I do that? I want to learn. I want to teach other women. I want to empower other women. I want to empower other human beings to say, okay, that's not me. My struggles as a child, my abuse as a child, my, you know, my divorce of 18 years, that's not me. That's just a chapter of what I went through. And I've learned so much, and I've ascended to a different level. I'm up here going, whoa, now I'm a real queen bee. I got another part of my wing, right?
Yeah, and it's not easy for some, because I know for myself, you know, I just felt like I guess I was enjoying feeling sorry for myself as I look back on it, that I was being self-pity, but it's not easy to overcome that and see the trees for the forest that you're standing in. So what would you recommend for people that are just really struggling with this depression? I have a question here. So I'm just curious what you would recommend to people that just feel like, you know, this is just ridiculous anyways. You know, things are bad. I've lost my job. What would you tell this person?
Me or Sophie?
Dr. Let's start with you, Dr. Jenny. You were talking there.
Well, people with issues are somehow always attracted to me. It's like I'm a magnet where they come. It doesn't matter. If
You're a problem solver. That's what it is.
So I was just talking to someone the other day with, you know, issues with being stuck at home with his girlfriend and their 2 kids, and how he didn't realize how much problems they had until COVID hit, and they were stuck together for pretty much 24 hours a day. And he's thinking, I started drinking more, I started smoking again, like, help me out. What do I do? And it's like, okay, why don't you like start counting your blessings, number one? Okay, you're looking at the glass and it's half empty all the time. You're focusing so much on the negative, and Dr. Sophie was talking about that. Why don't you start with looking at the positive of, okay, the children, you know, what are you doing? How are you serving her? Instead of focusing on how it's making you feel, focus every single day with, like, how am I going to serve this child? How am I going to serve that child? And how am I going to serve this woman that God put in my path? Right? As opposed to say, oh my gosh, you're driving me crazy, because you're different. I was like, if you were in a house with someone that was identical to you, there'd be no challenge there. You would be bored. I was like, I wouldn't want to be married to myself. There is a big thing with, okay, opposites do attract. I said, so this woman is different than you. Embrace her differences, and she can embrace yours. sit down, do what she wants to do, and then that's just one example. But then also supplements too. It's like if you haven't experienced cannabis helps you to take away all the noise, So start with cannabis is usually what I tell people. Go get your medical marijuana card. If you're
Keep it simple, Doc. I mean, why are we?
Back to
Let's
when I
help
was a
you
lot
out
younger.
here.
Now I do have a question here for you, Dr. Jenny, though. Oh, do you have something to say there, Christopher?
Sophie? Or Christopher putting something up.
Well, it was kind of going off. I agree with her since I've been keeping a grateful journal, just writing down 10 things that I'm grateful for every day, even if it's just the minute small things, because, a couple years even before I started photography, I just got out of doing surgeries from what's with the feedback? I'll continue. Anyway, and I just went through multiple surgeries, and just being stuck in bed all the time does leave you very, very depressed. And eventually I just started forcing myself to just get up and start cycling more and just doing some sort of activity just to get the blood flowing, just to instead of just being stagnant, going, "Oh, woe is me, what am I gonna do?" And eventually I just started taking photos with my phone because I was trying to pick myself up with like a game project and wanted reference photos, and it just got me to realize just all the little things I've been missing out just from even driving along the county roads, like this little wildflower, this little piece of grain, and just how it reflects off the sunlight, and it just makes you appreciate more of the little things that you always pass on because you're so stuck in your head about the big things, and it just helps to keep things in perspective.
Yeah.
That's
And
really
one
good
other
advice.
thing I'd throw out,
Thank you for that, Christopher.
one other thing to throw out in terms of mental health and stuff, one thing we do know, it's like we said before, it doesn't spread very well outside. So get out there, ride a bike, go run, do all of those things I think are great for your mental health, and they're not going to put you at risk of getting the virus. So I think that I've actually seen a lot of people do that now. I see way more people out walking and riding, families doing that together, but I think we should really be encouraging that quite a bit.
Yeah.
I agree 100%. That's where I come in live with nature, right? And that healing with nature and just getting out, listening to the birds singing, and just, hey, I like trees and the flowers and everything like that. There is something about nature that's very healing, and like Christopher was mentioning earlier, as well as art and art projects. And these are the kinds of things that you can do, and it really doesn't cost any money for nature to walk, take a walk, and the painting stuff, pretty minimal expense to get that as an opportunity to do something that you enjoy. Now, I wanted to go to Dr. Bob, and then I'm going to go to Dr. Sophie, and I wanted you to share as well on this too, about making this transformation and changing from being unhappy, feeling overburdened with the fact that I'm not coming up with answers if this is what people are thinking, to just move forward and make this positive transformational change. Can you tell us, Grandmaster, how to make that change?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when and Sophie mentioned Dr. Frankl's book in terms of meaning, and he was able to find meaning in terms of his own life, and he made changes, and thereby was able to even create a new therapy called logotherapy, which is amazing. And as we all go through life and through the changes, I know, like, I've seen it with many people that they may have started out one way, and then some big challenge comes in their own life, and some of them, what I saw was when they faced it, they went down. Others faced it, hit it directly head on. Then they found meaning. Then they moved maybe in a whole different direction. And I can testify in my own case, in addition to my clients, is that I have gone through so many different transformations. I remember in 1974 when they disbanded Force Recon, I was going to stay in the Marines for 20 years if it had all been in Force Recon. 1974, they disbanded Force Recon with the exception of 2nd Force Recon. I was with 1st Force Recon. They sent me back to regular fleet, back to regular recon. And I said, well, now it's time for me to get out of the Marines. I got out in 1976 after 8 years. And I went to my next journey, 5 years LEPD. That wasn't for me. I don't like rules. I don't like anything like that. And people ask me, well, you were in the Marines. Well, I was in Force Recon. I had to deal with all the rules that other regular jarheads had to deal with. So I transitioned and started doing my own thing. And since 1981, I've been doing my own thing and going through different businesses, teaching women self-defense, but growing and transforming. Every time a new challenge came up, including after I sold my advertising agency in 97, and then in 2000, I lost everything, millions of dollars. So I had to figure out what am I going to do? What was I going to be able to do to figure out my next part of my journey? And the next part was working as a stage hypnotist and going back to school to get my PhD in clinical psychology and also in neuropsychology. And then eventually doing my postdoc in neuroscience. So I love learning, and it helped me to grow and to challenge. But I tell people, if you want to be happy, go back to finding that thing that drives you. And I've had a lot of people come up and tell me, including like even little animals, like oh, this is Rocky, by the way. Just want everybody.
Animals are talking to you. I love Red. That's Rocky.
Hi, Rocky.
So Rocky has been inspiration to me because I used to go to like senior places and bringing Rocky along with me. They have another one called Sasha, which is a golden retriever. And I don't know where Sasha's at. Sasha's running around. Oh, Sasha's over there. Where? Over there. Shut up. I've been talking. You just popped up. This is not fair. Oh, Susan. There's me. Oh, shut up. Okay. So finding happiness.
So we're certainly getting, these.
See? We got our oxytocin going now.
Yes,
You're making us laugh.
Thanks for
I was just
telling me
gonna
that
say
it is oxytocin. I was going to say
I needed some
neurochemical.
oxytocin today. Thank you, Dr. Bob.
Thanks, Dr. Bob.
Rocky, no, this is not me. This is Rocky. Yeah, it's all about me.
Thank you, Rocky.
Okay,
I used to puppet, Dr. Bob. I used to puppet my children because I have 4 kids. And I was trying to figure out how to get them to engage one another and not have any jealous issues, right? Because I mean, they're like 2 years, 2 years, 2 years, 2 years. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like a breeder over here, just popping out these kids like a bunny. But I would puppet the younger one because they couldn't talk yet. So how could I get the older one to relate to a baby? So I would pick up the babies and just be like, hi, how are you? Talking to the big brother, then talking to the big sister. And it's so funny because, I mean, they would laugh and they would have serious relationships with these tiny little babies until they could start to talk. And it was like from birth to a year and a half. And then they took over after that. But yeah, puppeting, I think, is brilliant.
Oh, that's so awesome. Yeah, see, Rocky agrees, by the way.
Rocky.
Well, we love Rocky. That's for real. Now, I think what I'm going to do is before we go to Dr. Sophie here or anybody else that wants to say something in this minute, we'll start with Dr. Sophie. But Dr. Jenny, you have kids. You've got 4 kids. Okay, so what I want to know is as of today, not a single person under the age of 24 has died in Sarasota because of COVID-19. So what are your thoughts about children that are being forced to wear these masks? My statement here says, which have been proven by the CDC to be somewhat ineffective in stopping the spread, although we were talking about that. with I know that this is gonna definitely get you going here. So yeah, how do we feel about that? Although your kids are being homeschooled, aren't they?
Yes, and I never would have thought I would have been a mommy that would homeschool. So there was a lot of positive things that I embraced through all this because it was tough, but I scheduled all the play dates and made sure, like I'm so neurotic, I test everybody anyways. I have all my kits here. So if I'm scheduling a play day, I'm like finger prick, nose swab, spit here. They just did the FDA approval spit. So a week later, it's like, all right, you're good. You can come to my house. We can go to the park together. But I do the masks for the children when we're in big, huge groups. But for the most part, I try to avoid that. But all of the studies do show that children produce more melatonin than adults do. That's why they sleep better. So they're less likely, believe it or not, to be exposed to COVID. And it's the children that are getting COVID are the ones that are being medicated with the Adderall, with the Ritalin, with the Vyvanse, with the Zyprexa. I mean, there's so much that they're not even exposing to that. So I think there's a lot of science to support, okay, let's get our kids off of all these drugs. And how many children have allergies and they're taking the Advair, they're taking the albuterol, and it's weakening their little immune system. So these are the children that are getting sick. My kids, I mean, they get their vitamin D shots every week. They get their super immune injections every single week, which consists of the zinc, the glutathione, and the vitamin C. And you're talking really high doses. They're so used to it, and I just give it to them, and they feel great. And if they do get a tiny little fever, I give them melatonin, and then fever's gone. So,
well, I think that's a good point too. Is that we need to support our children because our children are going through a difficult time. They're going to emulate what the parents are acting like about it, and if we're filled with fear and uncertainty, then boy, that's going to show for the kids too as well. Interestingly enough, after having written that question that I just mentioned, though, and I did see Dr. Lisa's face on that, but that's all good. No, my granddaughter comes out and tells me, "Oh yeah, I like wearing the mask. That's all great and well and fine." And it's like, okay, well, here it's coming from the kids, and although it might be somewhat of a fashion statement these days, is what I'm thinking as well. So whatever works, if they're happy, that's what's important, and they're not feeling threatened. Um, okay, Dr. Sophie, let's go back to you. Um, so we're talking about that thinking, that creative thinking, and making that positive change. Maybe you can just give the viewers a little bit more advice about making this shift to start becoming happier and healthier.
One thing I wanted to also touch base, and Dr. Jenny just mentioned oxytocin. Now that is really a hormone that could be very deficient when we are in lockdowns or isolation or dealing with social distancing, because it is more produced when we are together, and it's the love hormone, and it's all that. So when you go on a longer term, you go 1 month, you go 2 months, now you go 3 months, and of course there's people who are going to get affected because they're deprived of that, and they might not realize. And this is why I mentioned laughter was a good thing, because it really induces all the feel-good hormones and encourages that kind of better mood. But now my concern would be, what about our silent generation? What about Generation X? What about the baby boomers, who are not very familiar with a lot of the technology and who are not able to be like on settings like we are? Social media, when it's done in a positive intention and with a purpose and a meaning, could really provide a lot of sense of togetherness and could really minimize the feeling of distancing more. And so I really feel that for those who are able to assist others that are not maybe as savvy, or maybe we can be the bridge or the lending hand to help that one other person, or maybe it's your grandma, maybe it's like help them to transition as well, because then we're going to have a bigger gap, and that gap is going to create feelings of stress and anxiety, because the feeling of separation, which is an illusion, but if we can find solutions, it's going to be a lot better. And talking about change and thinking styles, I would suggest always, also breathing, coherent breathing is very important. I mean, even Hillary Clinton, when they did the debates, we're not going politics here, but she had in her book wrote about alternate nose breathing, nostril breathing. And that really helped her to calm down in her very high stressful times during the election. There is box breathing, there is lip breathing. There are different breathing techniques that can really make you more coherent and more grounded emotionally, so you can actually think better. And for those people who are alone, single people, so imagine now you're social distancing and you have all these things, and a person is totally single and they're totally by themselves at home. So my concern goes to also always finding solutions to other, to people like that. Like including pets could be a good thought to bring in. Things that can really empower you and make you feel still connected. So if you're in a space where you're in between, don't stay in that space, but seek other solutions and options, because they do have them out there. It's just a matter of you allowing yourself, giving yourself permission to start seeking the solution. And thinking styles are very important. And I love what we call new box thinking and new box answers. So new box really relates to thinking in and out of the box, because we got to be in to measure our progress. Like Christopher mentioned earlier, he brought some really good valid points, because when you do steady progress, you measure yourself, that makes you feel good. And that makes you feel less stressed and frustrated about things. Progress creates meaning, and it empowers you. Gratitude does, and your video that you shared with us earlier, it's a very, very important ingredient for us to anchor to, and to feel thankful for what we have already. And Dr. Jenny, you mentioned that as well. So thinking out of the box, in the box, allowing ourselves to go into lateral thinking, divergent thinking, and also conversion at the same time. But learning different thinking styles will allow us to be more expanded. Our awareness is more expanded, and we're able to listen. And when we are able to listen, and I listen to what you say, what you suggest, might work, might not, but you know what? You've expanded your association cortex of your brain, and now you're able to be better at problem solving and connecting dots. So I would suggest that definitely.
Excellent. Now, yes, Aaron and Veronica, I'd like to you have children. Maybe you can tell us about your experience with your own child, and how they're adapting with this COVID-19 and back to school. Now, I think your kids are going to public school or private school or something?
My daughter, she's been actually homeschooled. This is her third year now in homeschool. So she was already in it, and it wasn't a big change for her. The only thing I would say that's probably different is the socializing aspect, because she loves theater class, so she can't do that anymore because she doesn't like to do it online. It's not the same. But that was one thing that she does miss, is the interaction with other kids. But other than that, everything's still the same. It hasn't been a big change.
But we did have to go through that when she first, excuse me, when she first started homeschool. Just like my parents are helping my niece and my nephew go through this process, and it's been frustrating for them. Because one thing they said is like, we didn't want to be teachers. We chose for our daughter to be in homeschool, but they didn't. And so we talk about that home environment as how's the interaction. There's a lot of getting used to, especially in even homeschool was like the first experience. The first year was like, what do we do? We're not used to this system. And so we had to learn the process. And I told even my parents was, give it about a month. You're going to have to learn how the new systems work. You're going to have to learn. And once you get in the groove of everything, it's going to be easy sailing from there. But you have to get past at least that first month. And we had to do that with our daughter too. And just understand what's the system, what's the structure behind that. And each year has been something a little different, but we learned to just breathe through that and reassure her that everything's going to be okay. It's even better than it was before, because we get to dictate what your curriculum and your program is, at least in our program that we do for her. But the first year was that social interaction, and it was her choice to go to homeschool, but still dealing with that. I'm not going to see kids. I'm not going to be able to interact or to have friends and all these things. And we told her, well, just because you're not in school doesn't mean you don't have friends. And we had Dr. Jenny said you'd have play dates, that you can meet people outside of school. But when you're in school, and there's no distraction now. And like Sophie was talking about, it's like when you get them to think a little bit differently, see what things you do have. You can have friends. You just have to choose. And so once she started to understand that, and don't get me wrong, it was a bit of a process, is she started to see things differently. It's not as stressful for her now, but she's had time to deal with that, where a lot of people are dealing with it now and they're beginning with it. And so our experience with it has just help these kids just go through it and reassure them that, hey, this isn't gonna be like this forever. It's not gonna be the same, but we have to learn to adjust. And what things can we do? We talk about connection and laughter. Well, we're not all in the same city or the same state right now, but we're connecting right now in a different avenue, and we can still laugh. We can still have a good time. We have other people that are watching with us. We are connected right now, just online, but we're still connected. And if that's what we can do, then that's what we have to do right now. But that helps all of us. And also nurturing the kids while they're at home, going through this process. If the parents are stressed out, the kids are gonna be stressed out, and it's not gonna be a pleasant experience, especially if all that energy stuck in the house. And I'm just reiterating what everybody else says, like get outside once in a while, exercise, and just change the way we think about it. And that's what we've been doing for our daughter, and it's helped her.
Yeah, and it's finding like the good in the situation. So for her, we told her, well, okay, you're doing homeschool and you could do it maybe 4 hours a day, enough to complete what you need to finish. But if you were in public school, you would have to be in public school for 6-7 hours and then go home and do 3 hours of homework. And that's a lot. That's a lot on children. Yeah. If homeschool, it's allowing them to do less of that, so their brains aren't all frazzled by the end of the day. And then she has time to do more fun things. And, whether it's playing, setting a play date with her friends or doing, art. She loves to do art. And, it's having that free time to do that now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's one of the benefits. And thank goodness for the technology that we have. I mean, I'm grateful for it. We're all here today. Wow, we've gone through a lot of information, but I want to also go to Dr. Lisa again, because Dr. Lisa, you're working with younger people and children. And so what would you recommend for the parents particularly, or even the children themselves? And some of them are young adults. I understand that now. What recommendations would you give to them in this difficult time?
I think echoing what other people have said, that I think as parents, I think kids pick up on our vibes. So, if you're, talking about it's a pain in the neck to wear this mask, I can't stand wearing it. And I think your kids are not going to be too excited about wearing it going to school if they go to school. On the other hand, if you recognize, this is potentially something that could be helpful and frame it that way. No, it's not the greatest, but it's not really that bad given the scheme of things, then I think they're more likely to accept it. I do think this disease is complicated in kids, and we don't really understand. This is one of the things that we don't understand very well. It seems like kids, we know they don't get as sick. We don't quite understand, is that because we think they probably are getting infected with the virus, but it's not maybe getting to their lungs the way it does with older people. So it's complicated with kids, but I do think that probably the best message right now is for kids to be wearing masks when they're with other kids. If you're going to send them to school, and these are people are now facing sort of these personal choices and sort of weighing the risk with their kids, whether they want to send them or not, and sort of making those choices. And I think that's one of the things that's tough with COVID, is that I think what you can do is gather as much good information as you can. And then you got to weigh it for yourself, and you've got to decide, okay, maybe for us, we want to send our kids to public school because we think there are certain aspects with going to school and being in school with kids that's important for our kids. And that's worth the risk of perhaps being exposed to COVID at school. For other people, they may come down on the side, you know what, we think we're going to try homeschooling this year and we're going to keep our kids home. But I think those decisions are very personal for people. And the best way to make those decisions is to gather as much good information as you can. You got to be careful because there's a lot of information out there. Not all of it is good. I mean, try to get it from a lot of different sources. Try to be, pretty circumspect with what you're looking at, and then make the best decision that you can. I'm lucky. My kids, for me, my kids are old. They're all, and they're working from home. So the benefit that we had in our house from COVID is that my kids, who none of them live with us anymore, all of them came home for a couple of months and worked from home from our house. And our family of 5 was at our house for a couple of, never ever thought we'd have it again. It was a blast. And the benefit of older kids is that they actually did some of the cooking and cleaning and have now not working, helped a lot. So it was really a blessing for us. And we really, not that we had to have a pandemic to have it happen, but it was very nice for us to have our kids home. So I haven't had to face those decisions that you guys are dealing with. It's tough, but I think, just get the best information you can and make the choice that works for you.
Much for that, Dr. Lisa. Oh, I guess I said thank you very much for that, Dr. Lisa. That was very good advice. Now, Christopher, so you heard a ton of stuff today, and you've shared, things that you do to be calmer, divert your attentions, and reduce your anxiety. Tell us, what's your take on this?
Which aspect specifically, like masks, or? I guess that's a yes, because I've also joined different Facebook groups with just autistics gathering together, and that also helps, just finding a tribe to connect. And they've had their own issues with masks, but it's not because of conspiracy theories or whatever you want to call it. It's just because the sensory overload sometimes. So sometimes, like with me, I tried cloth masks. I still can't stand it because of that feeling, because even growing up, even now, my clothes are a little bit loose because I don't like that tight feeling. It just feels constricting. And I mean, even when I was a kid, with the size of the shirt I was wearing, you could probably pitch a tent in that thing. So it's and so I also know someone who's a mother of an autistic child, and the way she did was just to calmly explain why it's doing it, instead of just going all rushing up, put on the mask, and being all panicky about it, and just see how it goes. And if one mask doesn't work, maybe a different type of mask does. And I've been going through 3 different types of masks, going through the pros and cons of it for situations such as the big stores or places that require a mask in order to enter. And in those types of situations, you don't really have much of a choice. But again, it's just learning to adapt the best you can with whatever comes, just like anything in life.
Advice. And I know that you're a role model for so many. I mean, I was so pleased to have you on my show, and as well to come back today and to share your experiences with the viewers. That's so awesome, Christopher. I'd like to give everybody about 30 seconds. We'll start with Christopher because we're coming to the near end of the show here. In about 30 seconds, if the people want to reach out to you, you got a closing thought, just say what you would like. Let's start with Christopher. If you got a closing thought, or if you want people to reach out to you, tell them how they can do that.
Oh gosh.
I put you on the spot, Christopher.
I mean, already doing live shows like this, it does take a lot out of me, to be with such a big group. But I just, it's just me trying to adapt in order to do all the things I want to do. So I guess different ways to reach out to me and just learn more about me is, ChristopherCasson.com. That's CASSON. That's my main website anyway. But and of course I do the podcast Through Autistic Eyes, THRU, just to basically me, just an autistic adult, just trying to reconnect with the world. Since growing up, I was a little bit on the reclusive side. So yeah, it's just me just learning as much as I can about the world, just talking to other people. So, and
Well, you're
hopefully
clearly
everyone else learning along with me.
you're clearly an example, even though you have autism. I mean, you're right here, you're on this live broadcast, and you share, and I mean, it's awesome. It's truly awesome. You're an inspiration to me and to so
Amazing.
many. Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
More specifically, I have Asperger's syndrome, which I guess some people would call high functioning autism.
Okay. Awesome. So, Dr. Lisa Sanders,
This is awesome.
about 30 seconds here to tell us if people can reach out to you, or your final thought, just to share with us.
Sure, sure. Let me just, before I do that, let me preface this by saying this has been really, really enjoyable for me. And I think this is a great example of how people coming at things from different viewpoints, different ideas about things should just get together and talk about stuff. Sort of listen to each other, respect what people are saying. We just do not have enough of that right now in the world. And if we don't learn how to do that, we're in bigger trouble than we are right now. So this is really enjoyable for me. Let me give a plug for my clinic. And if you want to reach out to me, I would say go to our website. It's called the Ybor Youth Clinic. So Ybor, like in Ybor City, YBOR, Ybor Youth Clinic. See what we're doing at the clinic, because that's my passion right now, is trying to do some good stuff for kids that need it. So if you want to reach out to me, just go to our website, and you can always contact me through we have a Facebook page too, which is another learning curve for me to get on Facebook and things, but can reach out through that. So thanks, it's been a pleasure.
No sound.
Lost sound, Steve.
Christopher, is that what I saw? No. Okay. So, Dr. Aaron Garcia and Veronica. All right. It's your turn.
I think of a final thought is, we're all going to go through different experiences in life. We're all experiencing the same thing, but we're all going to experience it differently. And if anybody's having mentally, physically, emotionally, and you're having a hard time dealing with things, maybe even some of the tips that we've all given today, you're having a challenge with that. The biggest thing that we can all do as human beings is reach out for help. That's one common thing that we find a lot, is that a lot of people that have a very hard time asking for help, thinking that if I ask for help, does that mean I'm insignificant, that I'm weak, that I should be able to do things on my own? But in reality, there's strength in asking for help. And we all need to be able to do that, no matter what level you are in anything. We all need help in some area. And there's somebody that can give us that helping hand. So whatever that is you're dealing with, struggling with something, reach out for someone for help, whether that's a family member, a trained professional. There's someone there to help you in that. We're all here to help each other. The connection of human beings is to help. And if you guys want to get a hold of us, if you're challenged with anything, you need some help, you can feel free to email us at av@aaronveronica.com. If you have any questions, you want to just reach us there. You can also find us on Facebook at Aaron and Veronica. And you can catch our show. Anything you guys need, feel free to reach out.
And I put our email into the comment feed as well.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you. I love you. I know we'll see you soon. And of course, I want to ask all my guests, I'll just do that because I know we're running right down to the wire time-wise, but that's okay. If we run over, we run over. If they cut us off, they cut us off, but it doesn't matter. Thank you very much, everybody. I'd love to have you back in the future. Now we're going to go to Dr. Bob Choate.
Yes, and I will make it very, very quick. Again, the whole panel here is amazing, and I'm so happy to meet each and every one of you, because I also learned a lot as well. So you guys are so awesome. Just want to give you a thumbs up. So find that meaning and that purpose in your life, each and every one of you. I love what Dr. Aaron and Veronica mentioned about finding a support system, people to help you along. That's very, very important, because again, we are not just individuals, we're individuals that need to connect with other people, and having a good support system will help as well. And I want to invite everybody to go to, because me and Dr. Sophie, we're the founders of Wisdom Cafe Live. So we interview people. And I want to invite everybody to go to our brand new website, Facebook, wisdomcafe.live, Live, and you can find our shows there that live stream as well. And my own personal website is bobschote.com, and you can check out the different things that I do as well. And again, I want to thank Steve as the leader who provided us a focus and an aim here. And
Thank you.
so,
Awesome. Okay, Dr. Sophie.
Yes, again, thank you. And it's been a pleasure and what a delight to spend airtime all together. And we should do this more often and be in such a beautiful service and contribution. I would say flow into your creative zone. That is a passion I have. I really feel that when we are in that zone, we tend to be more happier and more relaxed and more optimistic, more realistic. And it just brings all this confidence and courage in our personality. So adopt a creative attitude towards life. Remain open intellectually. Allow your intellectual curiosity to take around. I mean, something is, not too going well. Reframe the question. Adopt different techniques that's going to help and assist you through the journey. On my end, you can also learn more about me and what I do on Dr. Sophie, Sofie Nubani, Nubani.com. So Dr. Sophie Nubani.com as well. If you're on Facebook or LinkedIn or anywhere, we are here to connect and help. And like Dr. Bob said, we do host shows, we interview people, and we together as a community all like to share your stories as well so that people know more about you in depth. And so thank you everyone for sharing these moments with us. And I'm very happy that I was part of this panel.
Awesome. Thank you so very much for your wisdom and your creative thinking suggestions today, Dr. Sophie. Now,
Yes.
Dr. Jenny, we love you and you're so awesome. Thank you for joining us as well. Go ahead, Dr. Sophie, and Dr. Sophie. We'll get it right, Dr. Jenny. I'm sorry. What do you got to share with us here at the end? Hang on.
On
Let's get your
mute,
mic.
there I am.
There you
I'm
are.
back.
Yeah, gotcha now.
Yeah. So always positive intentions. Make it a point every single day to just say kind things to people. Compliment somebody on their outfit, on their hair, on their, on their smile, on their earrings, on their jewelry. Just be nice. Go out there and make it a point to be nice. Hold the door for strangers. Pay for the person at the back of you for Starbucks. Pay for a family that's in front of you that's going through their coupons, trying to buy groceries and has to send half of it back. So just think of ways to be creative, be nice, produce that oxytocin, because oxytocin is produced through hugs, through smiles, and through sex. So, have lots of sex, guys, and be
That's a
happy.
great way to do it. All right. So we'll end on a sexual note there. And of course, you can always join us on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. for the Ask Dr. Jenny
Dr.
show.
Jenny's funny.
Yeah, we tend to talk about sex occasionally. It happens. Everybody, we thank you. Thank you, viewers, so very much. Thank you, panel. I'm just so honored that you took time to come and join us this afternoon here on the East Coast. Thank you to everybody. I just want to close with this thought. In the midst of this devastating situation that we've been facing, I remain hopeful that the mental health care system will transform to meet the demands of our communities. A functioning healthcare system is critical. We've had guests here today that are willing to help and to share their wisdom with you. We appreciate you joining us today. Look up our guests. If you need to, go back, watch the replay. You can do that on the LWN website, lwnfoundation.org. Stay healthy. We'll see you all soon, and bye for now.
Bye.